Spiritual awakening is to wake up to the reality of who you truly are, and you are this non-dual formless essence of life at this present moment beyond conceptual and dualism. Meaning who you truly are in your essence is non-duality or source consciousness that transcends form identity, time, space, and the dualistic categories of this universe. Spiritual awakening is also to wake up from this illusion of the self, which spiritual traditions call the false sense of self. You can call it whatever you want. Some people call it the illusion of Maya, ego, personality, or the separate self. Spiritual awakenings are profound experiences that can change the way we see ourselves and the world around us. They can fill our lives with a sense of purpose, peace, and connection. However, not all spiritual awakenings are the same. Some people experience a sudden, powerful shift in their awareness, often called a spontaneous spiritual awakening. Others go through a slower, more gradual process of growth and understanding. But in this lesson, I will be fully discussing the difference between spontaneous and gradual spiritual awakening, and how these two processes operates and why some people may be awakened spontaneously and others gradually. Spontaneous and gradual spiritual awakenings refer to different ways in which individuals experience and unfold their spiritual growth or realization. While both paths can lead to profound spiritual transformation, they differ in terms of their onset, intensity, and pace. A person whose spiritual awakening is spontaneous or gradual has gone or is currently going through what we call a forced spiritual awakening. A forced spiritual awakening is when life forces you to wake up through pain and suffering so that you can remember who you truly are, to snap out of the illusion. You are being forced to release the identification with your mind, and this is not going to be smooth at all to your ego/separate self, and you will experience uncomfortability and unease. This happens through a process called an ego death. I already talked about ego death. Ego death is one of the tools used to cause a spiritual awakening so that people can wake up to who they truly are beyond the illusion. Understanding the differences between these two types of awakenings can help individuals recognize and appreciate their own spiritual journeys, whether they experience a sudden burst of insight or a slow and steady path to greater awareness. Each path is valuable and unique, contributing to the rich tapestry of human spiritual experience. In the following sections, I will be discussing the process of gradual and spontaneous spiritual awakening in detail so that you can know the difference between the two and how they operate. Spontaneous awakenings occur suddenly and unexpectedly, often characterized by a profound shift in consciousness or a transcendent experience. These experiences can be triggered by various factors, such as a near-death experience, a significant life event, or an encounter with a spiritual teacher or master. Spontaneous awakenings may bring about an immediate and intense spiritual insight, leading to a profound transformation in the individual's perception of reality. This is the type of forced spiritual awakening in which an individual goes through an ego death at once without the person knowing it for a long period of time. Then after that painful ego death, they quickly experience a very huge shift in consciousness, which they don't attain through spiritual practices or any guidance. It just happens spontaneously. People who experience this type of awakening don't actually know that they had a spiritual awakening. It's something that they figured out later on, through an encounter with spiritual masters and teachings. The ego death that a person experiences during this type of awakening is the ego death that gradually builds up slowly with time, to the point where it becomes unbearable. That's where a person reaches a point where they feel like they can't take it anymore. That's where everything is complete meaningless with no purpose in life. And the moment a person reaches that point, that's where a forced spiritual awakening happens, and it's spontaneous and quick. They experience this huge release of suffering, and it becomes permanent for the rest of their lives. And like I said before, A person who goes through this type of awakening didn't realize or know that they had a huge spiritual awakening. It's something that they discover later on, probably after years, that something within them had shifted, but they didn't know what it was. During a spontaneous awakening process, especially during an ego death experience, a person doesn't have any guidance at all or access to spiritual practices like meditations and so on. You go through an ego death without knowing it. I will give you an example of a person who went through a spontaneous spiritual awakening. Eckhart Tolle, a modern spiritual teacher, had a spontaneous spiritual awakening, and his ego death was triggered by his life circumstances. In his book, The Power of Now, he mentioned that he lived in a state of depression and anxiety for years. The depression and anxiety as part of his ego identity grew as time went by, and it got to a point where he couldn't take it anymore, meaning he couldn't live with himself any longer. His suffering during that night was too intense to the point where he had to surrender forcefully because suffering was unbearable and suicidal, and the moment he surrendered, something within him shifted, and it was the awakening of consciousness, the true self. He didn't engage in meditations or have any guidance, nor knew about spiritual awakening. It was something that he discovered later after years, that something within him shifted and he didn't know what it was. That's a spontaneous awakening, and you experience ego death at all once, up until you become free from it. In contrast to spontaneous awakenings, gradual awakenings unfold over an extended period of time. They involve a gradual and progressive deepening of spiritual insight and understanding. Individuals on this path often engage in spiritual practices, such as meditation, contemplation, self-inquiry, or religious rituals, which foster their growth and realization over time. This is the type of forced spiritual awakening in which a person is in total control of the process. During this type of awakening, you go through an ego death in cycles, which I like to call the ups and downs, rather than at once like a spontaneous awakener. In other words, you are consciously in control of the process because the awakening is not spontaneous but something you attain gradually over time. What is going on during this awakening is you are being presented with an external circumstance initially that triggers the experience of an ego death at maximum intensity. And as time goes on, you start to recover from it slowly and naturally. Instead of your ego death building up with time, like Eckhart Tolle, here your ego death ceases naturally by itself as time goes by. Here you know and have guidance to the process, and you are working towards attaining a spiritual awakening through spiritual practices. To know that you are going through a gradual awakening, the moment you have access to spiritual teachings or any spiritual practices after your ego death experience has just started or initiated, and this doesn't take that long, probably somewhere between 2 to 8 months or more, that's a sign that you are a gradual awakener, and your spiritual awakening will unfold slowly as time goes by. People who experience this type of awakening are being drawn to spirituality and have total guidance, access to spiritual teachings and support instantly, which they are being helped to attain their spiritual awakening. There is a component attached to this type of awakening, which I call the ups and downs. The ups and downs is what happens after your ego death has just began. Even if you have guidance and support, you're still going to go through the ups and downs. During the ups and downs, you experience isolation, the repeating short cycles of ego death, meaning as you are progressing, you will experience short cycles of spiritual moments and hoovers from your ego. As you embrace your awakening, there will come a time where you will be doing well on your ascension, feeling amazing, having spiritual moments, and then suddenly you crash, you go back to the ego death again, and the same thing happens again. You recover, you feel better, you crash again, and this goes on for months and years depending on your journey until you don't have to experience it anymore. Let me tell you what's going behind the scenes. Since you are working on attaining a spiritual awakening, the ego is fighting back for control and power to win you back, and it does not want this awakening to happen. It wants to control you, and it will use all the sneaky tricks and weapons against you to win you back, and it is good at doing that, trust me. That is the reason why you experience the ups and downs or isolations, because you are slowly releasing the identification with the ego, and the ego feels threatened because it wants to be in control to run your life. This component of the ups and downs is something that you have to let it happen naturally and organically by itself, because it's part of your awakening. With the ups and downs, at some point you feel like you are not making progress and you feel like moving backwards. And let me tell you that you are not going backwards or failing. You are changing and evolving, and there is a progress. It is just that your awakening is gradual and clunky, and you can't notice a change immediately. You will notice a change when time goes on, and you will feel it energetically that you're changing and growing. Trust me. You may be asking yourself, which awakening is more better, the spontaneous or gradual? And my answer will be, no awakening is better than the other. A person who has experienced a spontaneous awakening and a person who going through a gradual awakening are all experiencing the same degree of a spiritual transformation. The difference is that, for a person who awakens spontaneously, he or she experiences ego death at all once until they have that full rapid shift in consciousness. While someone who goes through a gradual awakening experiences ego death in cycles, the ups and downs as you want to call it, meaning instead of experiencing a full shift at once, they experience small shifts in consciousness, in which those small shifts add up over time to form a full realization, and this happens over time. Ultimately, the choice between spontaneous and gradual awakening is not something one can control entirely. It largely depends on the individual's unique spiritual journey, circumstances, and readiness for transformation. Both paths can lead to profound spiritual realization and a deepening connection with one's inner self and the transcendent. Thank you so much for watching. Whether your spiritual journey is marked by sudden bursts of insight or a steady path of growth, remember that each step is valuable and unique. I hope this video has helped you understand and appreciate your own experiences a little more. If you enjoyed this content, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might find it helpful. Feel free to leave your thoughts or questions in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. Wishing you peace and clarity on your spiritual path. Thank you again, and see you in the next video.